All right, here we go. All right, here we go. All right, so we went over the skin, right? Kind of looked quite a bit of it, talked about some of its functions. I don't know if we got to this layer. I don't think we did. We'll go back. We can back up a little bit here. And we're looking at the layers of the epidermis. And I said too that on the test, now this is a test on Friday. Now this is kind of throwing me off too. It's going to be kind of confusing, but it's the only way I could get it to maximize our time in. So we'll have our lab midterm tomorrow on the tissues. We'll finish the last setup today, which is pretty easy, muscle and nerve. I know Philip's the same way on Jerry Phillips' lab. Y'all got that going on. And then we'll have then on Thursday, we'll have our lab midterm. All right, we got another one coming in. We got everybody straggling in here. Okay, now on the test, you're gonna have to label some skin, right? We've already said that. Also, we're gonna label these layers of the epidermis, and you'll have to spell them, but we will not have a word bank. So just FYI, that's not going to work. So the epidermis, right, is that outer part layer. We've already talked about that. Look at that. Keratinite cells make up 95% of it, right? Make the protein keratin. Lots of desmosomes, tight junctions, right? So you don't have anything falling between it. And here are the layers of it. I think we did look over this, but we'll just kind of back up a little bit. But here's the picture showing it. Here's that stratum basal that's always indicative of the bottom layer of the epithelium. Stratum spinulosum, stratum granulosum. Only in thick skin do you get this stratum lucidium, which is a little clear layer right there. And then you got the stratum corneum, which is where we get our corns and our hooves on the bottom of our feet that we have to grind down sometimes or whatever, right? But anyway, that's the one that sloughs off. So basically, if y'all caught reading this, if you remember reading through this, that these cells down here, blood vessels only come to here. So these cells only get blood, food that's being transferred through that by cell to cell. So these guys eventually out here starve to death and form this dead keratinized layer. So we'll label that one. Okay, we already talked about things on the outside skin. I think we already did that one. I remember we went through this before. I'm sorry. And then we've got a lot of nerve endings out here, and we'll talk more about that later. We looked at this picture. I'm still reviewing where we had thick skin in the palms of our hands and the heels of our feet, and then thin skin over on the right. I think this is where we stopped. So the dermis. Now, if you remember from our wonderful lab yesterday, what is the main tissue in the dermis? Dense, irregular connective tissue, right? And it's going to be supplied with lots of blood supply. And we have most of these sensory receptors. We don't have a lot. The nerves really are not in that epidermis. They're usually stuck in it or under it. And this is going to anchor the epidermis to the body with some simple squamous epithelium in there, right? I mean, excuse me, loose connective tissue in there holding it together. Okay. Now, interesting enough, there are two layers of this. And look at this. There is this papillary layer, and there is this dermal, and then take a look, and there's a reticular layer. And if you pull it back, here's what it looks like. Pretty wild. Here's these dermal papillae. And remember, we see these loop-to-loops how the skin, the epidermis kind of makes a little loop-to-loop. If you could pull that epidermis back, the parts that are sticking up like the little fingers are the papillae. And then the rest of this is the reticular layer, which is mainly dense irregular connective tissue. Notice capillary beds to supply blood to the epidermis. Meissner corpuscles here, Pacinian corpuscles here, light touch, and somebody slap you or pinches you real hard in a deeper feel. Of course, the drawing is beautiful. Here's the real deal. Very confusing. Outside flaky layer. You can see the little papillae coming up and down. So this will be the papillary area from here up. And then you got the reticular layer, and you got some, there's a one we're going to look at today, Pacinian corpuscle, and lots of dense irregular, some glands in here also, and blood vessels. And back it up. Verbalize it there. That papillary layer, loose connective tissue, and that's those little hills and valleys formed by the epidermis anchoring down into it. Okay, lots of capillaries in that, right? And there's that Meissner corpuscle for light touch found in those dermal papillae right under the epidermis. We'll actually look at it a little while. It'll look like cancer sometimes, or what you think a tumor might be. Okay, got a few more coming in here. Everybody working in. One meter, sorry. All right, hang on. All right, then we'll come on down and we get in that reticular layer. Has that dense irregular connective tissue in there. Some collagen bundles, elastic fibers to give it some elasticity. And then toward the bottom of it, we'll find these Pacinian corpuscles that look like a fingerprint that can detect pressure and vibration, sound, and deep touch, or that sensation of when you get hit hard or whatever, bump into the wall. Full of blood vessels. We have sweat glands associated with hairs. They're on their own. Sebaceous glands associated with hairs. And then, of course, we're always going to have some fat in there too. Not too much to it. There it is again, looking up. I backed up, kind of went through the verbiage of it. Now, here's one that I thought was also kind of interesting. I don't know how we're going to, I don't really put it on test here, I don't think, but maybe a term in here. But a lot of people talk about the skin markings of fingerprints. And take a look at this. At these dermal papillae, they're the dermal ridges that stick out. And on doing this, they actually help you. They're indented, overlaying the epidermis. Take a look at them right here. So here is the tip of your finger. Here it is on a slide. But there are these little ridges called epidermal ridges, and that is one of the things that gives us grip to pick things up like a pen or something. Okay, now look inside on these ridges. There's a hole here, and there are sweat pores here. So you actually do sweat on the tip of your fingers, and this is the liquid that allows you to leave a fingerprint on any solid you touch. So table, glass, the gun you shot your ex-husband with, all those things can have a fingerprint. I'm just joking here, gonna wake you up. Can have a fingerprint on it. So one of the coolest things I think I've learned in this one was that these fingerprints are unique to each person, right? And there's actually some markings. We actually have a lab in the lab book on this where you can, we did our fingerprints and put them in there. I think my fingerprints are in the lab book, but you can have these what are called loops, arches, or whorls. Okay, and they're genetically determined and unique for each person. So no one has the same fingerprint as you. Even identical twins do not have the same fingerprints. One of the few differences in identical twins. Now, a lot of criminals take crazy glue and strip off their dermal ridges, so they won't leave a fingerprint on when they're going and doing their crime. Okay, but it's that sweat pore that leaves a little thin film anytime you touch a solid surface. And I thought that's pretty freaking crazy, right? So if you want to go do your fingerprints and see if you got loops, arches, or whorls, you can see that. And there's actually different pictures of them in the lab book on a lab that we're not doing, but it's in there, and I thought it's pretty cool. This is like arches to me, I believe, on this one. Okay. Now, here's another cool one here. I know some of y'all, hopefully most of y'all haven't had any surgeries, but a lot of y'all will have surgery at some point in your life. And the skins also have these what are called tension cleavage lines. These are indentions in the epidermis from gaps between collagen fibers, and these flexure lines, which are deep creases in the areas of the body surrounding joints, where the reticular layer is tightly anchored to deeper structure. And here are these lines in your body. So if you have surgery, you want to have the surgery with these lines, and it will heal better and have a less likelihood of leaving a scar. Is that pretty cool? So for example, this one in the chest here would heal quite well because it runs with these tension lines. Here, that's not going to heal real well, right? Because you cut across 4 or 5 of these tension lines. And ladies, right here is where you have a C-section a lot of times to give birth, and they will cut it left to right to go with those tension lines. So these are pretty cool little internal structures of the skin that you may not be aware of. Make for an interesting term, probably not a big discussion question. Wrinkling the skin occurs when you get older and your repair doesn't work well, and the collagen fibers decrease, elastic fibers. Some of these proteoglycans and the adipose tissue starts to not be in the dermis, and then you get these big wrinkles, right? To reduce the skin's firmness, you can hydrate and work on and recoilability after stretching tends to be deeper in areas of repetitive muscle movement. So my forehead and eyes, my dad can't hardly keep his eyes open now because his eyelids are dripping down on him. This is kind of a bizarre thing here, but obviously the second part's bizarre. But if you work outside, my dad's a farmer, so he has severe skin wrinkling in his face, right? Due to ultraviolet exposure, okay? And here's another one. Show me somebody who smokes, and I'll show you somebody that looks really old. I guess having the torch lit at your mouth or something, the chemicals, but you'll see a lot of facial wrinkling around people who smoke, right? Very intense wrinkling. There's really nothing we can do to fix this, and really all makeup does is hide the natural or aging process. It's like Bundo in a car. You have a dent, you put the little fake Bundo over it, right? So all that's doing is filling in some of the natural creases and holes and indentions, imperfections you have in your skin. Okay. Once again, now you can spend thousands of dollars buying stuff at Walmart or through through all these cosmetic companies, but there's really not a whole lot you can do. Probably the best hydration you got is probably Vaseline. Put it on your face. That's one of the better hydrators you got around the house. Okay. A lot of people put stuff on their face, right, to keep it moist. Okay. Keep it hydrated, and that's one thing you might do. In a few minutes, we're going to get into one of my favorite ones, and that is if you suntan beds, really stupid. Okay, really bad idea. We'll talk about that in a minute because we got some good pictures of skin cancer coming up. But that kind of made me think about it here. Okay, I never forget seeing this about 20 years ago on TV. I thought these people were smoking crack. Botulism will kill you, right? It's really dangerous to grow in a laboratory. But the botulism toxin paralyzes the release of neurotransmitters at a synapses in a nerve. And so by shooting this into your face, you can paralyze the face so you can't move your eyelids up like I'm doing right now. And then if you start taking it now, girls, then you will never move your eyelids, but you'll have a beautiful forehead for 30, 40 years without any wrinkles. So all these actors and actresses are shooting up with Botox. You can have a Botox party, right? And you inject it into the head and you can't move anything and it keeps you from getting wrinkles. It can leak down and you can get droopy face. Look like you've had, if you ever seen anybody done that, if they get too much of it, it can be kind of dangerous. Other common things is, and y'all seen a lot of these actresses of having the collagen pull up on their butt and other places and injected in their lips, right? So you get the big puffy lips, which seems kind of dangerous. Those don't always turn out real good. So having elective surgery for vanity is probably not a real good idea. You don't really want to go in for surgery, right? And look at this, the topical creams, not tropical, topical, claim to reduce appearance of wrinkles, but they have no proven effect. Now, one of the weirdest things out there, guys, is our FDA don't have nothing to do with cosmetics other than to make sure it don't kill you. So all these claims that they do, like these weight loss pills and stuff, none of that's been regulated by the government. And none of the makeup industry is regulated by the government, other than to make sure it's not something toxic that will make your skin rot off. So they do test all this stuff on rabbits and dogs' skin. I'm sorry, dog and cat lovers. I know that offends you, and rabbit lovers, right? But they do test a lot of this on the animals before they allow it to be sold at Walmart or whatever. Okay, let's talk about this. Here's a cool one. Skin pigmentation. How does our skin color occur? Very good one here. Your skin color is mainly determined by the amount of melanin that you have in your skin. Melanin is the pigment produced by the melanocyte cells in the stratum basal of the skin, and they produce this chemical that is very dark that's going to determine our skin. Now, interesting enough, your basic skin color is pretty much predetermined by genetics before you're born. So you should not change skin color as you get older, okay? Although there are a couple of diseases where the melanocytes break down. You may have seen people with spotty skin, they have bright brown, white, or just very unusual pigmentation. That's a disease. It's pretty rare that it can happen. But this actually has a function, okay, other than for appearance. Whatever the real biological function is, this melanin protects the nucleus of the melanocyte cell from ultraviolet radiation that will cause mutations and sometimes cancer, right? Now take a look. We'll see a picture in just a second. So I'll read it to you and show it to you. Melanocytes, arm-like extensions, contact or even pierce the plasma membrane of the keratinocyte cell in the stratum basal, and these melanosomes migrate to the end of the extension and release this chemical melanin by exocytosis. Now watch this. I think a picture may even be better. Let's take a look. So here is the melanocyte cells. Here's the nucleus of the cell, and we are in the bottom basal lamina there of the stratified squamous. And look, this melanin is transported, and it is going to go right here and form a shield around the nucleus. Look at this. I thought I had a better picture of that. Sorry. I'm looking for the better picture. And you can see it pushing it up here, and it is going to go up here. Here's where it's being made. Sorry, nucleus, Golgi apparatus. And look, follow the arrows, and they push up here, and they're going to go out here and form this layer around that nucleus because the sunlight is coming in here, and that is going to cause cancer. Okay? So everybody that gets exposure to ultraviolet radiation, I don't care what your skin color is, unless you're an albino, then you're going to tan somewhat. Okay, my daughter turns red, my baby one. My oldest one, she tans like I do, but she doesn't tan very well. But you can see it here. So that melanin is there to protect that nucleus from ultraviolet radiation and thereby causing cancer. Okay, and so tanning, right, is usually look. There's immediate response. Oxidation of melanin already present will turn darker, but then within 72 hours you'll have more melanin being produced, so you will then tan. Now, when I was a kid, the tanning booths came out, and the actual history of this is kind of bizarre. Back in the 80s, maybe late 70s, dermatologists discovered that these tanning beds, lamps that shot you with ultraviolet radiation, could help clear up some skin rashes. And so if you had real bad acne or something, you might go to a dermatologist that shoot you under these lamps, and all of a sudden you'd get a tan and you would clear up your rashes. And so one day, some dermatologist must have had that moment of Shazam, eureka, right? And then we got in the whole business of the whole bed to lay down in and tan and tan. Now, here's my take on this. We'll go ahead and do it. We'll look at the pictures when they get here in just a minute in our slideshow of skin cancer. Let me just throw it out there to you. Now, when that came out in 81, I was a junior. My sister, 4 years younger than me, and she, and at the age in the 10th grade, 9th grade, went to the suntan parlor, got in there, laid in there for whatever they said, an hour or whatever, came back. We ended up going to the emergency room that night. She had anaphylactic shock due to overloading of ultraviolet radiation. Turned red, puffed up, had to give her Benadryl. And then she continued to suntan bed until about maybe 7-8 years ago. So that puts her around 50. She just turned 50. So she's about 47. And she found a spot like on her chest somewhere, and so I thought she better go to a dermatologist to have it looked at because she thought she might develop a skin cancer. And that was fine, but they found one about the size of her thumb on her back. So she had to have a chunk of her skin and her tissue under it about the size of your thumb cut out of her back. She quit suntan bedding. But if you look at people, and some of y'all got family members that have been suntan bedding, if you suntan bed for 5 or 10 years, you actually start to look older. Never got my foot stuck down my throat much farther than one time this woman, who I found out later, her husband had just left her. She was about 30, maybe 30 years old, and her husband had been obsessed with her skin since she was like 15, and he was a skin freak or whatever, and wouldn't let her, and made her suntan all the time, suntan. And she looked, we got in the class one day arguing with me, and she just finally like, how old do you think I am? I thought she was every bit of 45. So I thought I'd be nice and say 35, right? Shoot under 10, and she was 30, and she started crying. Come to find out her husband just left her for an 18-year-old with fresh, virginal skin. Okay, later on in our talks. But anyway, but it will make you look bad. I hate to use a bad movie reference, and there's a lot of bad language in this movie, but it's I think there's a couple of scenes that are the funniest I've ever seen. How many have seen the movie Something About Mary? Really funny movie. There's a scene in there where this dog catches on fire, and it's maybe the funniest thing been made in a movie in 20 years. But nobody's ever seen that movie it's a pretty crazy movie. But the woman in there, there's an aunt in there that looks like, I'll try to show you a picture of her, but she looks like she's suntan bed since 1980. And so she's probably 60 and she looks 110. So if you suntan bed, you're going to get old you're going to look old much later, much sooner. Okay. And so you want to avoid that. And so as I went into my schooling, I was working in toxicology for a while. And so one of the theories of toxicology is this, that everything will kill you if you get enough of it in a short enough period of time. So the basic concept of suntan bed is very stupid. We're going to lay down, right? And Megan's going to get 8 hours of sunlight in an hour. How y'all think that works? Hey, oh, thank you, brother. Thank you, sir. Thank you. All is well, my man. We'll have these at break. Dude, you did good. So think about that. Now, look, don't get me wrong. I love a tan, okay? Your days look beautiful with a tan, okay? But you're setting yourself up for severe skin damage. And I can actually, maybe in lab today, I can look at a couple of y'all's face and tell who's been laying in suntan with about a 75% accuracy. Or you've worked outside. Maybe you've had to work out in a farm like I did my whole childhood. But you are starting to destroy your skin, okay? In the old days, my grandmother that's been dead a while, but she would like almost put a mummy roll on to go get the paper, to go get her mail. Because if you had a tan in the 40s and 50s, you were what? Considered probably a poor laborer. Because people who worked out in the fields had a tan. Now we flip that. And I don't know what the correlation between suntan beds and beer stores and bait shops. I don't know where that came about. But everybody, Megan, and I know where y'all live out there, right outside town. I think every service station out there has and out at Luxahoma and Coldwater has the, worms, minnows, and suntan tolerant, right? Okay. All right. Now here's my next question. If you go suntan bed, do you think it would be a good idea to get naked to get in that thing? Why don't we expose body parts that I don't think God intended ultraviolet sunlight to hit, right? Our genitals. Hey, wait, where's Jalen? That's where I want, Tower. That's what I want. I want cancer on my genitals, right? I mean, every boy wants a big chunk of his penis cut off. That's a big thing we like to have done someday before we die, right? So put a cap on that, cover it up. And girls, would you like to know where women are getting cancer? And their nipple and in their genitals, okay? So keep it covered if you're going to get a suntan bed. I think that's really stupid to go in there. And by the way, another side note, anytime they give you safety goggles, that should be a concern, right? You got to look for goggles in there because the ultraviolet radiation will burn your retina. Okay, we'll look at skin cancer and come up in a minute. But and I've been saying that for 20 years, and guess what? FDA's finally agreed with me. So they've done a test where they followed these women and men that laid in suntan beds over 20 years. And here's what the data says. It's really frightening. It would be better to go out the beach and get burned and peel than to lay in a suntan bed and never burn. So you're actually better off to go out and get sunburned and then peel and go through all that trauma than to do the suntan beds and never, ever get burnt, okay? So, hey, it's America. You have a right to kill yourself as you want to, right? But I would be very careful on the suntan beds. They're now banning them. They're already raising insurance premiums on people who have them, okay? And some states have already banned them. I call them cancer beds. I had one girl who worked at one. She used to cook her meat in that. Put a hot dog in there and you cook a hot dog about 15 minutes. So you're actually cooking your internal organs is what you're doing. You're microwaving, you're ultraviolet radiating your internal organs. Okay, not a good idea. Not a good idea. But they'll probably be banned by the time y'all in a couple of years. They're getting close. Okay, we talked about sunburn, enough on that, right? Talk some more about this. Individuals that live in regions exposed to high amounts of ultraviolet radiation, for example, Africa, would develop darker skin to the presence of excess vitamin D production. So there is a natural, some of our difference. And by the way, we got freaking wars and crazy, crazy groups that think they're better because or think less of somebody because they're darker or lighter than them. But all this has come down to just melanin in the skin. And like we said the other day, there's been no correlation of any other differences in the races. Okay, so we're all, in fact, science is telling us we're all come from Africa, right? As we said the other day. But very interesting on that one. A lot of discussion about that. Freckles is a increased melanin production in the local spots, right? I always make a joke, show me a redhead girl and I'll show you freckles, right? Those two go together. The genes for that are close to each other possibly. A mole I look at this, it's an increased pigmentation caused by local proliferation of the melanocytes, but not an increase in melanin. So that's the melanocytes. And interesting, albinoism is a total lack of melanin production. Maybe y'all seen there's a picture floating in one of the books of a snake, an albino rattlesnake. So he has no color, but we can see the blood in his eye. He has red eyes because of the capillary beds in the eye. When I went to Ole Miss, I had a minor in chemistry, and they wanted me to take like 12 more hours of chemistry. I said, I ain't gonna do that. I had already had enough of my community college, but they didn't want to accept it. So I got a minor in anthropology, archaeology. I was raised on a farm. We had a lot of Indian mounds on our farm. I have a collection of Indian rocks that I picked up in the fields on my farm. And I know that seems very bad. I mean, almost like grave robbing, but we were driving over tractors with plows. We were tearing them up. And I've never sold one. So that's my moral line. I've never sold one of these rocks, but I do have some. And so I have a real affinity for our Indians that were kind of done wrong, the Native Americans, the original Americans. But there's a group, the Hopi Indians live out in Arizona, is a tribe of Indians that has one of the greatest number of albinoism of any other race we've ever studied. So they have like 10 times, 15 times more. I made that number up, but it's substantially. You know, 5 or 10 times more albinos in their group than not. And so somebody studied it. It's kind of funny because if you're born with a boy and you're a boy albino and you're living in the desert, what would happen if you went and worked in the field? You know, when the men would go off to harvest or hunt or whatever, you would get cancer and die, right? So these men would stay in the cave with the women and kind of protect the women, and they had a lot more than protecting going on. So that's why there's so many albino Hopi Indians, okay? Because they were visiting all their neighbors' wives too while they were at home and they were lonely. Okay. So anyway, but that's our theory on that in that particular group. So we do see that kind of wild. There's also a very weird one. I just throw it out here to have a little fun today, try to make it interesting. There is a disorder, very rare. I don't have the name of it up here, but where children are allergic to sunlight, where you are actually allergic to sunlight, almost a vampire-like disorder, but you don't suck blood. And there was an instance where this couple had 2 kids with this. I mean, you would break out in whelps and literally start oozing your skin, almost melting off. It gets hot and big old, knots come up. And in our week of and don't get me wrong, I got some really good friends of mine. I do think, I don't know what the number is, but I would like to think that 75, 80, 90% of law enforcement people are very honorable people, right? Okay, but I do think there's a percentage, and we can disagree on that percentage, 5, 10, 15, 20 of people that probably should have never been allowed to be in law enforcement, right, because of their personality. Well, here's one of these, okay? So that couple, to drive their children around during the day, they'd have to put a quilt over them. So can you imagine how tough it must have been for this cop who pulled over a van with a broken tail light, and there's 2 kids undercover in the back seat? What do you think would happen? Oh, and by the way, this is all white on white, so there's no race involved. Imagine if the couple had been African American; it would have been absolutely gunfire, I'm sure. But there's just the husband driving, and he begged them. The cop, pulls his gun and goes, "What are you doing? You're abducting these children, And he's like, "These are my children." "Yeah, they are, right. Get out from under cover, children." And they wouldn't do it. Finally, he had to pull them out from under cover while other cops were coming up, and they started whelping and screaming. And the daddy is sitting there at gunpoint crying in cuffs, like, "You're going to kill my children. You must cover them back up." And finally, somebody put a quilt over them. Okay, it was the most bizarre thing, but that really happened a couple of years ago. So they should probably carry some papers with them, that says, "Hey, my child has this weird, we're allergic to sunlight." Okay, really is a disease. Pretty wild. Just always throw out some weird biology stuff there, but that's a wild one. But I have had some friends of mine that are albino, and that's not the big deal, other than they would get skin cancer easier. They don't have any protection. Okay, and here we go. I went on this in the tanning bed industry, a $5 billion industry in America, right? And there is no such a thing as a healthy tan. I even got into a really argument with this woman who swore that her bulbs were much safer, and I'm like, I don't know if it's true. I mean, how many of y'all remember, y'all heard, I know I'm getting old here, but y'all remember these thing called the circus? Y'all used to hear the circus when y'all were little? But Barnum and Bailey was the great circus of all time. They closed a few years ago, but I don't know if this is the correct quote, but one of those guys, I think Barnum was attributed with saying this: "There's a fool born every day, and I'm going to sell him something." And so the whole suntan industry, and by the way, you get addicted to this. I have some good friends of mine that have their own suntan bed. They're quite a little bit more richer than I am, but they're addicted to it. So this is, how many of y'all done it? I mean, how many of y'all got in one of these? You feel good after doing that. Okay, Heather, it feels good, doesn't it? I mean, it feels good to a lot of people. Well, this is a thing like me, Sadie, me and my Diet Coke addiction here, but you can get addicted to the suntan beds. Okay. And so, and by the way, okay, and we've had a great summer, guys. I love y'all. But one year we had a group where we had like one lab at 1:30, and I had the lecture, and we had like 30 minutes to eat. So I started bringing my lunch like I did today, and I actually ate with some of the students because this was before COVID-19. And we had a nice group like this. And look at our pictures here. We got a very cool, multiracial, super cool, diverse group here. And we're all eating one day. And I'll pick on Simone, who's a beautiful young lady. But one of the African-American ladies in the class said, "Look, I'm not going to eat with y'all, but I'm going to run to the suntan bed real quick and get a little tan." And the white women, you'd have thought she was going to go home and shoot her dog or something, okay? They're like, "What? What would you go to a suntan bed?" And we had one of the coolest talks because we all liked each other. We all got along. It was like second month. It was like July. Everybody knew everybody. But everybody tans, people, and everybody has a right to tan if they want to tan or not tan, right? But somehow, undoubtedly, the white ladies did not know that the African American ladies could tan, and we had an interesting conversation there. Okay, so I hope as you go to college, you make some friends that maybe don't look like you, so that you can learn from each other and learn that we all have the same things going on in our mind, and we all got that crazy uncle, right? Who's got that crazy uncle, right? We all got that crazy uncle that probably should be getting some mental help, right? Okay, okay, you know what I'm talking about. We all got that, so we have a lot more in common than y'all think we have in difference. Okay, but that really happened one summer, and I thought that was kind of that we had this conversation about suntan beds. Okay, look at some of the things that's shown here. Any amount of tanning decreases melanocytes and other skin elements. It causes aging of the skin prematurely and increases the risk of skin cancer. Now, what it's doing is killing the collagen fibers in the dense irregular connective tissue. Now, whether or not you may not get skin cancer, but you will look older quicker. Okay, and we all know nobody wants to look 80 years old when they're 50, right? And you can look at my face. I have a lot of sun damage because I was raised on a farm and I played a lot of golf, and that was probably a bad idea, some of that. Okay, big business though. Okay, there is some other pigments that we have. Here's one called the keratins, which are yellow pigments found in the orange and the egg yolks. One of my favorite stories here is a lot of y'all, I mean, hopefully all of y'all will have children, you know, get married and have kids. I think that's a pretty cool gig that I would recommend everybody give that a shot, right? But I've had several friends of mine start feeding their babies. When you get a little baby and they start eating solid food, you know, you'll just feed them whatever they can eat. And I've seen this several times where you feed them so many balls of them carrots that you can turn yellow. The kid turns yellow or orange. So you can actually eat so many vegetables of one type that you will get your skin will turn yellow. Okay, and of course, jaundice is when you turn yellow due to the liver not breaking down the bilirubin and biliverdin. So as our hemoglobin breaks down in our body, you can turn yellow. The yellowing of the whites of the eye is a sign of liver failure. And as we know, when people that are light complected get hot after exercise, the blood rushes to their skin and they turn red, right? And then if they get cold, then the blood is pulled off their skin and they can turn blue or, you know, kind of a gothic, pale looking. And here's a couple of those. Here it is. Erythemia is blood flow into the dermis and you turn red. And pallor is when the skin is pulled out, the blood is pulled out of the skin and you turn pale. Okay, and here's one. If you got too much of the red blood cells in the skin, the hemoglobin is very low level there, you can turn reddish. Okay, all right, then we'll move on to some accessory organs here, and we'll take a break today. I'm not going to run y'all quite as hard, so we're going to finish this in a minute, and then we'll go to the next chapter on the next test so we can maximize our time today. All right, bear with me. Not a very bad one. Okay, man, spend a lot of money on hair products, do we not? Okay, so hair are protein filaments growing out of these hair follicles, and they don't have any nerves on them. That's why you get your hair cut and it doesn't hurt unless the person cutting your hair cuts your ear or something, right? And that gets painful, right? Or it cuts your scalp. Okay, so here's what a hair follicle looks like. Nothing much to it here as far as you cut it. A cortex medulla. And look, these are two terms we're going to see all summer. Outer layers are called cortex and the middle layer is called medulla. So cortex medulla just means outer middle layer. Okay, don't freak out on that one. Here's the shaft, which we see a cross section here. And then the root follicle down here has the cortex medulla and a hair papillae. And here are where the melanocytes are being produced down here. There is a hormone, which we'll talk about in AMP2, called melanocyte stimulating hormone that you make in the wound, and that determines your skin color. So your skin color has pretty much been predetermined before you're born. Okay. Has anybody tried the spray on? That's probably the safest one right now till we find out if that's killing you or not too. So my sister actually does the spray on now instead of the suntan beds. And so until we find out those chemicals are really bad for you, which I'm betting they are, okay, then go for the spray, Megan, and don't do the suntan beds anymore, right? Do the spray, get the spray on tan. That's probably a little bit safer. There's also some hormones you can buy, some pills that can actually make you tan a little bit, okay, that triggers the hormone that makes you make more melanocyte. So some of these actors take that, right? Or actresses, okay? In some animals, it provides some protection, but for us, there's not really a lot of it. It's around the eye, maybe helps protect the eye and the nose, filtering out stuff. Protects the scalp, right, from skin cancer on the head, right? Some animals, it's used for sensory detection. We don't use our hairs a lot for sensory detection, but a lot of the animals do. And for warmth, we don't really get warm from our hair. Okay. We already mentioned shaft and the root, not much to that. There's a little bulb. They grow for about 3 or 4 years and fall out. So it's normal to have hair in your brush. It's natural for it to fall out. Okay. Nothing much here on how it grows. I got nothing there. I'm not going to make you label any of that. We're just going to tell you that's not coming. Don't worry about it. Each of them do have an erector pillar muscle that make it stand up a little bit. And this is the goosebumps when people get scared or you get cold. And a lot of people don't have a lot of hair on their arms. A lot of people do. Everybody's looking different. But there's a erector pillar muscle that goes with every hair on your arm. And where you don't have hair, you still get goosebumps. That's where the hair follicle is located. Maybe the hair is real thin there. Okay. Grows about 1 to 1.5 centimeters a month, right? Eventually it dies and falls out. It lives about 6 years. Like I said, it's pretty wild. So then it falls out and regrows. Pretty wild. Not a lot to it. Hair texture can be quite different, right? It talks about different textures of hair. Talk about that. Red hair has a special pigment in it containing iron, but blonde is a little melanin at all. So darker brown hair is a little more melanin, and black hair is lots of melanin. So when graying of the hair means your cells are not making the melanin anymore. And so as you get older, my beard is gray now because the melanin is not being made in these the cells in my face. Okay. Nails, another one that doesn't have a lot of function for us, but for animals it is for gathering food and stuff. Here are the parts of the nail plate, which is the part that we trim off that comes out. The nail bed is where it connects down here with skin underlaying it, right? And then there's this little lanula right there under there, which is like the baby nail or a little half moon there under that. Okay, just under the nail. There's been some good commentaries about this. If you have grooves in your nails, that can be a sign of malnutrition, or you can have skin cancer under this. Dots and stuff under the nails, not good. A lot of people have fungal infections of the nails, right? And the toenails specifically, right? And there's some treatments for those, but they're bad for your liver. Here's side view, and you can see some different, little more structures here. Nail bed, nail root under the nail plate. Nail bed's under that. So pretty wild here. A lot of little cool things here. Not going to go crazy on that. Not going to do much nail here. Not my favorite. Like I said, y'all can tell I'm not super crazy about this chapter. Just a lot more anatomy and not a lot of physiology. Nails grow about 5 millimeters per week. Toenails even slower. And you may want to trim them occasionally, right? No melanocytes in them, right? Mainly protect the underlying soft tissue and maybe help gripping items and picking up tools, but not a super function. Whole nother business, people having their nails done, right? All right, let's talk about the sweat glands. There are 2 basic types of sweat glands. These, we'll talk about them. The sweat glands, we'll talk about 2 of those. And the sebaceous glands produce the oil in the sebum, which has a product called sebum that's in our hair. So here's an interesting thought, and I'm not just trying to play devil's advocate, but how many of y'all spend hundreds of dollars on hair products every month? A lot of y'all spend a lot of money on hair products, okay? Probably wasting a lot of money. Like I said, I waste my money on my Grizzly tickets, but here's the deal: you use soap to wash your hair, and you strip all the oil out of it, right? Which is God's natural oil. Then you put conditioner back in, which is oil. Okay. Kind of cray, right? And so I got people in this group right now probably washing their hair twice a day, right? If you look around, some of the ladies in the room that don't wash their hair every day, and their hair looks real pretty, right? So you don't have to wash your hair every day, guys. Probably killing it by probably not doing it any good. Read the labels. Probably shouldn't be putting that on your head, right? Would you like to know a group of people who get more cancer than anybody else, or one of the top groups of professions to get cancer is hairdressers. All those dyes and all those chemicals, and they're breathing them every day, right? Pretty high risk profession there of some type of cancer. But I don't know. How many of y'all? I didn't wash my hair every day during the corona, right? The COVID-19, 2 months off, probably a little bit healthier, right? You don't have to wash it every day. Anybody in here been on anybody been on like a mission trip into another country, like a third world country? Our group used to go to our church used to go to Russia, and they don't bathe every day in Russia. They don't take a bath every day, and the funk, they would tell me it took a little while to get used to the funk, right? The body odor. Okay, they might have a basin in their room that they might bathe, like a little splash bath every day. So I'm not making fun of me, but I'm just saying, just don't judge somebody just because their culture may be a little bit different than yours, right? Okay, but you don't have to wash your hair every day, and there seems to be a lot of proof to that here in the biology of it. Okay, so this is kind of interesting. Here are some of the glands that these sweat glands can be Erican sweat glands, right? Then there are these apical sweat glands. We're going to talk about them in just a minute. And then these oil sebaceous glands with the hair follicle squirt out and go out with the hair. Okay, now check this out. The two types of sweat glands are kind of interesting. This first one here, the Erican, is a tubular gland, secretes water, some waste products, and electrolytes, and it doesn't have a smell. Doesn't have a smell to it. Kind of wild. But why do people have funky underarms? It's the bacteria under their arms that are eating the sweat that make the toxic smells. So your friend that smells weird may have some funky bacterium under his or her arm. Deodorant, check this out, does three things. It's perfume to mask the funk. It has zinc oxides to clog the pores in the sweat glands, to clog these pores we looked at a while ago. And then it's antibacterial chemicals to kill bacteria. So all of our deodorants do one of three, hopefully do all three. Mask the smell, kill the bacteria, zinc clogs the hose so you can't sweat. Isn't that kind of crazy? So it is the bacterium that make this one stink. Now look at this next one. This one is found in the axillary, under the arm, genital area, anal area. Large gland produces protein-rich secretion in the hair follicle, and it is odorous. And when skin bacteria get it, it can make it smell bad too. And you can produce this one based on sex hormones, especially after puberty. And somebody told me, and I have look, on a 0 to 10, what would you put your nose? Is anybody in here like a 10 or 11 on smell? My wife can smell a cigarette 3 miles away lit. And I've never smoked. But we go to restaurants, she can't even eat because somebody's smoking 2 doors down. I mean, it's crazy. Okay. I can't smell anything. After cutting these cats in A&P for 30 years, I can't smell anything. Okay. Really bad nose. But there is a smell associated with sexual arousal. Okay. That's the sweat. That's it. The African gland. Okay. So, bad joke here. One day Hayden comes home and his wife is, 2 wine bottles in the den, the bed's all messed up and the back door's open and sees a man running in the woods. Okay. And it smells like something's going on, right? Okay. Then Hayden caught his wife with a neighbor or whatever. I'm just joking. Okay. But the smell of that is a smell of a different sweat gland. Okay. Kind of wild. Okay. And then we got the modified sweat glands that make the earwax. So earwax is a modified apical gland, and the wax protects the eardrum, right? And it can get packed in there and trapped. Probably 90% of America sticks Q-tips in their ear every day, and they're packing the wax in their ear. You'll be sitting in class one day and a big old piece of wax is going to roll out onto the table. It's very, very, very attractive to people, especially if they're eating. I mean, find it very cool, right? Have earwax roll out of here. Has anybody ever tried an earwax candle? You ever seen these? Kind of cool. There's a candle you can buy at the pharmacy that you actually stick in your ear and light it, and it melts the earwax out and pulls it out of your ear. You can get them methanol, like cigarettes are methylated, so it will actually open up your sinuses, open up the ears. A lot of kids have ear infections. I've used them on my children to clean their ear out. My doctor friend actually my pediatrician friend uses the water pick to clean the teeth on low setting and sticks that in the ear to wash out the ear. I mean, he's a pediatrician, so about twice a week, some kid comes in with something stuck in his ear. Usually a boy. For some reason, boys like to stick, peanuts and BBs in their ear and all kind of weird stuff, and he just washes it out with that, which is kind of interesting. Mammary glands are also modified sweat glands. Y'all may not know that, but the mammary glands that make the milk for the baby are modified sweat glands also, which is pretty cool. Okay. And then we got the oil associated with the hair follicles, made with the sebum, that helps keep the hair healthy, but then we strip it out every day and put it back in with conditioner. Helps kill bacterial growth. It's hydrophobic, inhibits water from sticking to it. This very good stuff here that God makes here that we strip out and put it back in. So here is the sebaceous sweat gland, the oil glands of the hair follicle. Okay, and here we go, some pathology of skin, acne. Now talk about a doctor's dream here. 96% of adolescents and young adults develop some degree of acne, okay? It's usually accumulation of sebum and dead cells that clog up, create a blackhead, right? A pimple. It can be severe, and it can even leave permanent scarring. Males during puberty are seen to be more susceptible, tend to have more pronounced during puberty, and it usually disappears from 20 to 25. You can spend a small fortune on acne medication, right? And it will eventually stop when you get about 25, hopefully. We all seen that. Okay, let's talk about burns and lacerations. This is pretty interesting section. We're about through this chapter. There are 3 degrees of burns, right? And this will make some good test questions. A first degree burn, minor, only damaging the epithelium, the epidermis, excuse me. So here's our skin, look, epidermis, dermis, subcutaneous layer. Here is what a first degree burn looks like. Maybe you touched the oven, got shocked. It can be a chemical burn. Even radiation can cause this. So it gets red and it's quite painful. But minor wounds, it heals easily. Skin is red, no permanent damage. Second degree burn involves the epidermis and the dermis. Okay. Can leave a blistering, can leave scarring, and it is extremely painful. Now they say that this second degree partial thickness going into the dermis, but not all the dermis, is more painful than third degree. Third degree, it kills the entire skin and you don't feel anything. So the skin dies. This is one of the reasons why you may have seen people that are on fire or get burned real bad. They can actually move around. You know, they're running around hollering and stuff, right? A third degree full thickness kills the entire skin and it has to be replaced. You have to have a skin graft. Not generally painful at first because the nerve endings have been destroyed. Just a couple of stories on this. I know that Megan knows, you know, our local firefighter. We had a local firefighter that I knew his children pretty well, and I knew him. He knew me. We wasn't real good friends or anything. But he went into a trailer or house that he thought that the parents thought a kid was in there, so they were inside a house burning, trying to get what they thought somebody was in there. Come to find out there wasn't nobody in there, and then the roof fell down on him and it melted his mask on his face, and it burned his whole face off, his ears, nose, everything. And he struggled with multiple, probably 50 surgeries trying to over the years, really, really tough. And then he ended up about 2 years ago, Megan, getting a face transplant, about 2 years. And y'all seen it on the news. He was the first one to get, or maybe the second one to get this complete face, like in the movie Face Off, where they came down and a guy was killed in a motorcycle wreck, and his mother donated his face to him. Now he will have to take drugs probably the rest of his life, right? Because his body's going to reject that face. So he has to take anti-rejecting drugs to keep his immune system down. But he seems to be doing okay, right, Megan? Is he doing okay, to the best of your knowledge? I mean, I see him around town. I speak to him, but really, that's pretty wild. I had another friend of mine that was on a trip in a Winnebago. You know what, those big like mobile homes, like you can go trips on, rent, you know, big like a Winnebago. He was sleeping in the back, and it was on the interstate up in Illinois, and a gas tanker truck driver fell asleep, came across the medium on 4-lane and hit them head on doing 65 miles an hour. He went through the bathroom, the kitchen, the den, the front windshield, landed in petroleum, woke up, rolled over, and when it caught on fire, he saw the fire come to him and set him on fire. And he tried to put himself out, and he literally told me that he just laid down and said, well, it's been a great life. It's time today. This is a really bad way to die. And some pedestrian had pulled over and took a coat and put him out. And so he ended up with 65, 70% burns. But luckily, I mean, just he got lucky. It didn't get his face, but it got all his chest, his back, and all his legs. His jaw was broke. And when I saw him, they were about to go back and re-break his jaw. They didn't think he was going to live, so they didn't even say his jaw. They were more worried about his internal damage and the skin grafts he had to do. But he was also a marathon runner. He was in excellent shape. Now, this is one time, you know, I joked the other day about being big is an advantage, but if you are in a bad wreck, it's also a good idea to be very healthy too, you know, or muscular or something like that. But he did make a full recovery, and he's still alive in Illinois. But he had 65% covered burns on his body. So you have to do skin grafts on this. And like I said, you cannot live without skin. You have to have skin. Okay. Know those. I know y'all are going to see this probably when some of y'all may end up doing being a first responder. But how they come up with these numbers, right? They're not going to go into the ER emergency room and measure this kid that's been burned, right? They just kind of use kind of a graph like this. They call it the rule of 9. So each arm, front of an arm is like 4.5. 4.5 is 9. 18, head 4.5, 4.5, and that all equals 99. Then they give you 1% for the genitals. So they just kind of roughly map it like that, and that's how they come up with these percentages you see on the news about body burnt, how much they've been burned over the body. Pretty wild. Okay, and then skin cancer is the most common type of cancer on earth, right? And you want it to be malignant, not metastasizing. Okay, here are the 3 types. This is basal cell carcinoma. This is really common. Look, it's kind of a crater centered. Okay, this is the most common one. It comes from the keratinocytes, and it starts in the stratum basa. Sorry, long week. Due to exposure to sunlight, rarely metastasizes, and is easily 95% survival rate. I mean, cut that off, 99% probably. So if you get one on your face, you want it to be basal cell carcinoma. Okay, that's a pretty safe one. Okay. Squamous cell carcinoma, a little bit more dangerous, but still high, super high survival rate. And look at this one. Second most common from the stratum spinosum. Scaly plaque may ulcerate and bleed, usually on the head and neck. Tumors are more likely to metastasize than the other one, so it has to be surgical. I think this one was on my sister's back. So they will cut a plug out to get all of that. Now watch this next one. This is the one you really need to look out for. Malignant melanoma. Look at this one. So when you see this asymmetrical shape, border irregularities, usually blue to black, a variety of colors. It's generally larger, usually bigger than 6 millimeters. That's the size of a pencil eraser. Trying to give you a reference. And it's always evolving, changing shape and size. And look at the numbers on this. Early detection can be treated, but if this thing gets spreading, it metastasizing, and it is one of the big killers of people on earth. Full blown, stage 3 of this is very low survival rate. I mean, you're talking about, y'all know pancreatic cancer is a bad one to get, right? And that's like a pancreatic cancer is like 15, 20% 5-year survival rate. Probably lung cancer is the only one. It is just worse, right? I mean, 15 years, 5-year survival rates like 15% on lung cancer. This is not much better. This is a bad one to get. And it's even harder to see on people with darker skin. So if you have darker skin, you want to be very careful to look for this. It kind of looks like a mole, doesn't it? So you want to check this out. And if you have any question, go to a dermatologist and have it checked. I'm going to tell one story on this, and we'll probably take a break here. I think it's the last slide. But probably about 15 years ago, we hired a young lady in our publication area, that does our news releases and all this kind of stuff. Beautiful little blonde girl. I mean, just smart, sweet as can be. She's about 27 years old. Just a very nice person. I met her a couple times, spoke to her husband, met him. Her first year here at Northwest, we get around February or January, and she's pregnant with her first kid, or maybe second kid. But she's pregnant with a child. And the people working with her in her office over in publication started smelling something on her, like something was dead. And so the senior lady there, they got met and said, you're going to have to talk to her because something's wrong, and we think she's lost a baby, because they think the baby may be dead and she just hasn't had a miscarriage yet. So the boss sits her down and goes, hey, you know, I'm just going to say Robin. It wasn't Robin. But Robin, have you been to the doctor lately? How's the baby? Went 2 days ago. Baby's fine. And they went like, look, we don't want to get in your business because we love you, but we're all smelling something on you. And it's not like, you know, body odor. It's something like something dead. Something ain't right. We smell something on you. And she goes, well, you know, I mean, baby's fine, but look, I do have this spot. And she pulled up her shirt and she had one of these about 1 inch big and it was oozing. And that afternoon she was diagnosed with malignant melanoma. They could not do the surgery they needed to do. She had the baby. She had her baby like 2 months early. And we buried her 4 months later. So, and she wasn't a big fan of suntan beds. She was suntan bed her whole life. So there's a 27, 28-year-old. The next year we all donated money and we have a scholarship in honor of that girl here at Northwest Today. And she never met her daughter. Well, she met her daughter, but her daughter was not old enough to remember her mother. And so very sad. Now look, guys, look, I know my diet coach is probably going to kill me, but at least I'm an old man. Okay, you girls, you know, your pursuit for beauty is not worth getting killed with a suntan bed, right? Because these are incubators for skin cancer. Okay, so just be careful with that. Look for that one. Go to your doctors and have your checkups. That could be a bad one. All right, let's take a little break. What time we got? Yeah, that's pretty good. We did about an hour. Let's take about a 10-minute break, 5-minute break. We'll come back and look at the now that ends our test material on Friday. So we're going to go a little bit ahead into bones, okay, so we can stay on task, okay? So take a break. I'm going to drink a little coffee, and I'm going to get the other PowerPoints up. I'll even stop the recorder if I can get that to work. So we'll have to record our break. So just be kind of watch what you're doing as far as walking in the building this morning. They should be coming down here sometime this morning and start cleaning the floors, okay? If they got job dues, let's be nice and be patient with them. Okay, we're fitting to get into what I find a lot more interesting systems. I do find the nervous system, some of this other is going to be really good, but we kind of getting into, we're now going by systems, and our next chapter is on bones. And this is really what we're going to be looking at next week. So pretty much all lab next week is bones, okay? It's the week of bones, okay? And we may go ahead and do that brain dissection on Thursday just to get it in there early. So y'all have a final on that. Your lab final is next Wednesday, okay? Well, a week from Wednesday, not next Wednesday, but 2 weeks from today. 2 weeks from today is our lab final. So, but we'll have bones, and we got 2 weeks of that, and should be pretty cool. Shouldn't be that bad. Okay, so what do bones do? Okay, so the skeletal system is going to include the bones, obviously, and the joints are put in this section too. Okay, and bones are, you know, we always saw a slide of this, right? They have bone marrow, they have dense irregular connective tissue, they've made out of several things, but let's look at the functions of it. So main thing we think of when I think of bones, I think of protection, right? They protect the skull. We don't want anybody bopping your head, right? That can be very deadly, right? So protects the internal organs with the breastbone, the chest, sternum, ribs, all these are protect. Second function is mineral storage. So we store minerals, specifically calcium and phosphates, in the bones. And we are always breaking down our bones and rebuilding our bones to replenish and maintain calcium, phosphorus, magnesium levels in our body. So it is a storage bin for minerals, okay? And it can help control acid-base homeostasis. Here's your $5 word for the day, hematopoiesis. Hematopoiesis means to make blood. And so the bone marrow and the red bone marrow, and actually it's kind of interesting. Most of your blood production is in the ends of the irregular bones. The scapula, the hip, the coxal bone, very little made in the big bones of the femur and tibia and humerus. So I know we got that metaphor, bigger is always better. Well, not when it's making blood, okay? So it's the irregular bones. Matter of fact, if you've ever seen it on TV on the Discovery Channel, when they do the bone marrow transplant, that's where they stick that needle. Where's it go? In the butt. They go for the hip. So they go in there and pull it out of the hip, out of the coxal bone. So hematopoiesis means to make blood. And we also have fat storage, okay? So red bone marrow is where we make blood in our ends of the regular bones, the irregular bones. But it is the shafts of the long bones where we have yellow bone marrow which is fat storage. Okay, now this brings me to a fun, interesting story. I'll try to wake us up a little bit. When this is killing me with this COVID-19 thing. I normally, before I got this job 7 years ago, I took a trip in May. I got out on May like 15th, would have 2 or 3 weeks off before summer school. Then I would just teach all summer. So my trip would always be in May. And so I've done a bunch of trials. I've been to a lot of the national parks in America. Still got a few more to go to. I want to go to Alaska. And like I said, last year I went to Hawaii. It was one of my bucket lists. But one time, and I usually travel with, I got 2 buddies. And actually, my dad going was kind of a guy's trip. I know this sounds kind of sexist, but I do some guy trips with my dad and some of my buddies, and then we'll go scout the area. Then I'll take my wife the next time, and I've carried my girls with me on some of these with these guys. So they've all gone since they were like 12 to 22. I've taken them on some trips. My oldest is a park ranger because she fell in love with the nature and outdoors and stuff. But we're out in Denver, Colorado one time. If you're ever out in Denver, I got a cool place to eat. Go to this place called the Fort. And there is a 1850s fort that this guy got the blueprints for and rebuilt this fort, which used to be right outside Denver, which is now a suburb of Denver. And when I was there the first time with my buddies, it was much more fun because my bill wasn't but like $100. But when I was there 2 summers ago with my daughter, my 20-year-old, and my wife, the bill was like $300. So it was a lot more like, ouch, this is expensive. So it is more fun when you just got one to pay for. But on their menu, first time I'd ever seen this, they had bone marrow. So I'm bringing this home to our lecture now. I'm going to make some sense of it. And so we ordered the bone marrow out there one year with my buddies, and my accountant friend would not eat it. And what they did, it's all wild game. They all have antelope, buffalo. You know, it's a real famous restaurant. They've had the G7s met there with a Bush. I mean, this is a high-end, fancy restaurant. And so basically, the guy built the fort, and he ran out of money, and the banker in Denver said, hey, your wife's the best cook I've ever seen. If you'll make a restaurant on the first floor and make living quarters on the second floor, I'll loan you the rest of the money. So it's a real famous restaurant. And so at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the fort door is open. You go in, it's a real fort, and it's a really famous restaurant. And on the menu, an appetizer was bone marrow. So they had taken like a deer, like probably a mule deer, and cut the finger just like this. Then they broil it. Now, my wife, of course, goes, well, I don't want to eat blood. It's not blood. It's what? Fat. And if any of y'all are familiar with Julia Childs, probably the most famous chef of all time, so famous book author, right? TV critic, food cooker, or whatever you want to call her. The original food TV chef on TV was Julia Childs, and her favorite meal was bone marrow, broiled bone marrow. So you boil this down, and then you eat it with a butter knife, and you put it on like a bagel chip. And it tastes just like the best steak at Como Steakhouse, because it is the fat in the steak that gives it the flavor that you like. So if you're a meatitarian and you like steak, you know that flavor, that's what you like. It's the fat. So this is pure fat on a cracker, and it was quite entertaining, quite good. When I had my daughters there, they did not want to order it, and it was like $40. It was a $30 appetizer, so we did not order it. But that's one of the functions of bone is fat storage. And of course, the age-old one here, the one that you probably should know, right? Movement. So in other words, you can't have movement without muscle and bone. You have to have both. And as I told y'all, remember the other day in lab, I think we talked about it, muscles only what? Shorten. And so all movements involve bones anchored to muscles so we can get the movement. So you can't have one without the other. You have to have bone and muscle. Okay? Okay, and of course, it's huge in supporting our body weight and structural framework. The skeleton supports our body. Those poor feet and knees get a lot of torque on them when if you're overweight like me and you're not trying to do anything. So walking and stuff, a lot of work on bones. Okay, so that's a little summary showing all these things that bones do: protect, mineral storage, making blood. There's a term, hematopoiesis, means to make blood, fat storage, movement, and support and protect the body. Pretty important group. Okay, now bones come in different shapes. We have 5 shape classifications, and there are about 206 bones in the human body, and there's probably another 300 or 400 parts of those bones we learned. You should know. So there's over 700 things you can learn in skeleton. We're going to narrow it down. I'm going to have some pictures drawn. I'm going to circle some pictures in lab. We're going to narrow it down a little bit. We're not going to go quite as detailed as Ammerman's book is, but we'll show you in the lab book what I want you to know as we go through it. Okay, here are the different classifications of bones. The long bone is the one we think of, like the humerus, and the ulnar radius, the tibia would fall in this group too, and fibula would be a long bone. So they're long. Then there are short bones. This is the this is one of the carpal bones in the wrist. Okay, and so these are short bones. This kind of have little small pieces of bone. And then we have a couple of flat bones. The skull and the sternum is one. The sternum and the skull is very thin, a flat bone. Then you have the vertebrae that are completely cray-cray. They're irregular shaped. I mean, they are very strange. And so we're going to do each of these groups, give them a day next week, and spend quite a bit of time on bones next week. Here's a weird one here. The patella, the knee, is a sesamoid, a round bone. Just kind of hanging there. Kind of weird little bone. And here's showing some of these where they're found. Nothing much here. Okay, now here's a little bit bigger picture here. Most of the other long bones have a dense, irregular connective tissue connected to them called periosteum. So this is like duct tape surrounding the bone. So it's a very tough connective tissue, dense, irregular, connecting the bone to the rest of the body to hold it, this is where the ligaments and tendons would grab on to anchor bones and to hold. Remember, tendons connect muscles to bones, ligaments connect bones to bones. Okay. Then you have these, look at these perforating fibers called Sharpie's fibers made of collagen anchor the periosteum into the bone. You can see them right here. These little fibers here. Maybe I've got to blow up in just a second on this. Also notice that the long bone has the ends of the bone is called the epiphysis, and the shaft is called the diaphysis. So once again, now guys, look, these next couple of chapters, specifically this one in joints, they were absolutely smoking a crack pipe when they named all this stuff, okay? It doesn't seem to make any sense to American language, okay, or American English, okay? But anyway, so new term for you. Here's your $5 word. Epiphysis is the end of a bone, and the diaphysis is the shaft of the bone. Okay, let's take a look at the picture here real quick. So you got that periosteum, right, with these perforating fibers holding it down. And then if we cut it open, you have this medullary cavity in here with yellow bone marrow here. And the red bone marrow is found in the irregular parts, the epiphysis of the bone. Okay. You also see the growth plate or epiphyseal plate or epiphyseal line. Now, this bone is not growing anymore. Notice here, here, and here. If you did this, an x-ray of a 13, 14-year-old, there would still be cartilage in there. And as long as you have cartilage in the epiphyseal plate, this is where you grow. So your bones grow here, here, and here. Okay, we also have two types of bone formation. The one y'all saw in lab is called compact bone, and we were seeing slices of this. The ends of the bone has a different type of bone called spongy bone, and we'll see it right here. So it looks like a sponge on a slice through. Okay, and we'll talk more about it in just a little bit as we go through it. Just some more terms to know. There's diaphysis and epiphysis. We also have cartilage on the ends of these knobs, and this is articulating cartilage. So this is the cartilage that bone-to-bone contact gets. And remember, osteoarthritis is when you wear all that cartilage off, right? We saw that image the other day, remember that. Another type of that is rheumatoid arthritis is an autoimmune disease where your joints are attacked by the immune system, and you eat your cartilage out of your joints. And that's a really bad disease. Okay. And we got the medullary cavity, yellow bone marrow, red bone marrow, I think, and all that good stuff. Articulate cartilage. Articulate means a connection up between two bones. So that's cartilage between those connections. Okay, here you can see the compact bone, and we saw those Robison canal. Those are lacunas in there. And spongy bone looks like this, looks like a sponge. Okay, it has little bones in it that make it up called caniculus. So these are the little bone fragments that make up the spongy bone. Look at this, compact bone is one of the two types of bones, has a hard texture, linear compression and twisting forces. It handles that really good because those lines in there, it gives it strength. So it's like a tree sways in the wind, so it won't pop. Our bones have these compression, linear compression lines that help it stand trauma when it's being bent, et cetera, et cetera. The spongy bone has a honeycomb look. That's a good word I forgot to mention, right? It allows long bones to resist forces from many directions because it's only on the ends. Okay. We got the endosteum, which is the connective tissue layer in their membrane. Epiphyseal line, we saw that as the growth plate, and this is where you're still growing. Now, most of us stop growing. Girls around 18, boys around 21. Very few girls grow a lot in college. Actually, I always like to make fun of myself. I was 5 foot tall in the 5th grade, and I was 5 foot tall when I got my diploma at the age of 17 when I graduated. Yes, it's kind of a fun childhood there, especially since most of you women have a very unwritten rule about what? Not dating anybody that is what? Shorter than you, right? So that would leave me, what I think maybe one girl in here is around 5 foot tall, right? So I'd have to be really talking to one of these beautiful ladies that are shorter, right? Now I know that's not always true, but I didn't have a lot of dating there in high school because I was very short. I'd have to date an 8th grader, right, to get anybody my own height. That would be kind of weird. But I did grow like 6 inches first year of college, so it's pretty wild. So I actually had delayed puberty on that. Okay. But anyway, but you can do an X-ray and see if that epiphyseal plate. We're going to look at that in just a minute, how the bones actually grow. It's one of our questions coming up. So that's the growth plate. Okay, we've already looked at this. I think we've named all this already. It's kind of going a little backwards here. Okay. We've already kind of hit on the different shapes of these. Sometimes you can have a sinus, which is a hollow cavity in a bone. We have a lot of sinuses in the skull, right? Okay. Here is what the skull looks like. And this actually, we're going to see that there are 2 ways bones are developed. And then we'll come back and look at this picture because this is kind of cool. Look what you got. You got a layer of spongy bone and a layer of compact bone and a layer on the inside and a layer of compact bone on the outside. And there's that periosteum on the outside of that. This is very tough and light. So the flat bones are very tough. Okay, and bones have big blood supply, right? So they have those osteons where blood and nerves go down through. Look at that. Talks about the blood flow here. Long bones get 1/3 of their blood supply from the periosteum, okay, and then 2/3 come from the blood running through these tubes, through the canal, central canal, and those osteons that we saw in the slides, and we'll look at that in a minute. Red bone marrow is found in the spongy bones ends, and this is where we make our blood, and we get more red bone marrow in the pelvic, in the vertebrae, right? Little humerus, but not really in the long bones. It's mainly in the ends of the long bones. Yellow bone marrow is the shaft, the deficits for fat storage, triglycerides and adipose. So a bone marrow transplant is when they go in and pull some of that red bone marrow out to treat cancer or sickle cell anemia. And so the problem is this: they have to destroy your immune system. They take out about 2 quarts, which is 2% of your blood, and you give it to they transplant it back into those irregular bones. But it takes about 2 to 4 weeks to get good flow back, and then you have no immune system during that window. So they have to kill your immune system, kill all your blood production, reseed you with the bone marrow, and if you don't get an infection during that month or 2, then you're cured of the cancer or sickle cell anemia in the case of that. We talked about that a little bit in lab. So bone marrow transplants are very common for cancer, specifically blood cancers, and they are the best treatment we got for sickle cell anemia that's life-threatening. But you do knock out the immune system. It's quite a risky thing. You're in a bubble for about a month. Okay, microscopically, we'll look at bone. Okay, this next little part is pretty cool. So bone tissue is made out of 65% inorganic material. That's the calcium bicarbonates we'll see in just a minute, the calcium, and 35% organic matter that is collagen fibers mainly. Now look at this next couple pictures. It's pretty wild. The inorganic matrix is calcium sulfates and actually called hydroxy, I can't even pronounce that name, hydroxy axophate or whatever. There's the formula of it, but it's a calcium compound with phosphorus in it. That is the hard part of bone. The organic part is mainly collagen. Okay, protein fibers, proteoglycans, glycosaminoglycans, glycines, glycoproteins. Now watch this. Here is two fibulas. This is the long bone in the leg, bottom of the leg, behind the shin, the bone behind it. The picture A, the bone has been, all the organic material has been removed, and all you got left is those calcium deposits. And they dropped it on the floor and it shattered. On the bottom one, they removed all the chemicals, the minerals. They removed all the calcium components, so it has none of the inorganic matrix, the minerals, nothing but proteins left, and you can tie it in a knot now. So God did a really cool thing here, right? You want a bone to be what? Hard, but yet what? Some flexibility, right? So that mixture of 65% mineral, which is inorganic, and 35% collagen, which is an organic compound protein, gives it this flexibility to bend and stuff. Now we know it breaks. We've all broken, most of us have broken a bone, but it is a really amazing compound bone. Okay. Some of the other inorganics and bicarbonate, phosphates, magnesium, sodium, and the collagen fibers give it great twisting ability and tensile strength. So it won't break. It can bend but not break. Thoughts? Is that pretty cool? I love that picture. Isn't that pretty cool? So fine mix there, 65-35. Okay, now we've already covered these, but let's do them again. So here are the bone cells. Let's knock them out. A mature bone cell living in a lacuna is the osteocyte. You can see him right here. Here's a drawing of him. Then we've got the one that builds bone up, which seems to be completely named wrong, right? Because in my mind, blast means to tear something down, but not in bone. Osteoblast do what? Build bone up, right? And osteoclast, tear bone down. Now notice that the osteoblast is a single cell, single nucleus, build bone up. But this big boy right here he is. This is thought to be 3 or 4 fused together monocytes. So this is like the mother of this baby is a monocyte, it's 2 or 3 monocytes. So it's a big phagocytic cell that makes acids and stuff, and it will break your bone down. And so we're always breaking bone down, rebuilding it. And that's just the way, that's the nature of it. Okay, and you can see it here. It's going to talk about it. The osteoblast is a mature, I mean, that's our bone builder, right? Bone deposition. And look, now I'm going to tell y'all, I love some of the artwork in her book. I think some of the artwork we're going to look at is just terrible. Okay, I'm just going to call it the way I say it. I don't really, she gets too carried away about how these things make these kills. I think it looks like some bad animation. Okay, but anyway, we'll look at it. But just remember, osteoblast, build bone. Osteocyte is the mature bone cell surrounded itself in a lacuna with little holes in it to get blood in and out. Think of a bricklayer building himself into a room that they can't get out of, right? That is an osteoblast becomes an osteocyte. Okay, and here he is. Look, so here he is in the lacuna with little tentacles to get food and nutrients in and out, but he cannot get out. And then we have our osteoblast going to eat some of that away. I mean, osteoclast. Here he is, and this is the picture I thought was pretty weird. They produce hydrogen ions, acids, and enzymes to break down the organic component. Now, hold on, this is kind of goofy looking. Looks like something off Star Trek, you know, like those one of the aliens one time that eat everybody, right? But here it is, trying to show you. Right here is a really pathetic picture, I think, of it breaking down enzymes to break down the collagen and acid to burn off the enzymes here and hydrogen ions to break down the bone. And here are the components of it being absorbed back into the body, into the osteocyte. You do not know that for the test, but that's just their way of trying to show you bone working. Okay, histologically, this is what we saw in lab. Those osteons have arteries, veins, and nerves in it, right? So we can observe the compact bone and the spongy bone. Here's what we saw in lab, right? And actually have a model of this showing you the 3-dimensional diameters of it. But look at this, the osteons, which is one set of circles. Now, somebody always asks me, Robin, can you count the rings to tell how old you are? No, that's trees. So you can't count the rings in our bone and tell how old somebody is. But what's going on here is each osteon is all the cells growing from the blood vessels and nerves from that one spot. So it does grow out, and notice that they have alternating patterns of what I call circumfrontal lamella and that interstitial lamella, there is a pattern to it. So there's a pattern that lends strength to it. Somebody said, look at this as a bunch of trees, a ring of trees. Each tree is a tree by itself, right? You have a band of trees, and y'all seen the trees sway together. So that's kind of a bad metaphor here. Each one of them could be an individual tree, maybe. This is what we looked at in lab. We looked at compact bone with the arteries and veins digested out. Okay. There are also connections between osteons called perforating canals. Used to be called Bachman's canals, but we've taken the name out of everybody in biology. But these concentric lamella have a pattern, as we saw. They spiral, and that gives it strength. There we go. So you can see these. The osteon is just all the circles going with that one central canal. And notice that these lamella are alternating patterns. And the caniculi are the little canals connecting the two lacunas. So blood, vessels, all kind of nutrients in here from that central canal. Now, when we saw it in lab, all the blood vessels are right out. The osteocytes have fallen out of the lacunas. We're looking at like a empty house, if you say, right? Or empty, hollowed out bones. Okay, does that make sense? I know. Has anybody ever been down to the Gulf Coast and picked up sea stars and starfish, right? Well, that's all the organic matter is rotted out of it. All that's left is the shell, right? You can buy them and lay them out in the sun, and they just die and they rot out. Well, bones, they do that sometimes too. They can put them out and let some. I don't know how they do it now, but they used to let like some insects go in there and eat all the meat out, right? Then they'll bleach it, the bones, okay. But we don't. The only bones that we now have now, we may all use plastic, but some people that don't know if they're body to science, they can become a skeleton, I guess. There's the caniculi. That's the little canals that connect the lacuna, little lines here. That's how they communicate and share resources. Here it is, another side view showing these lamella, the patterns. There it is. Volkmann's canal connects to the osteons, right? So these are connections between the osteons, right? So this perforating canal, Volkmann's, connects two osteons. And so it's a lateral left to right tube. And there you can see, there's a little bit better picture. So here you can see the perforating canals connecting different osteons, right? And then the hollow space is that medullary cavity. So this is compact bone, and it's really tough. Spongy bones at the end, looks like a honeycomb, made out of the little trabecula. And when women have a brittle bone disease, as you get older, a lot of times women go through menopause and they quit making estrogen, and it throws off the two hormones that control bone, and it hollows out. Some of y'all probably had a grandmother that's had what's called a bone index scan. Like it's like an MRI, and then they check the thickness of the bones, and they age your bones. I have a good friend of mine's wife that fell here in town about 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. She was about 54. Now she's about 65 now. And she fell into a spiral break of her femur. I mean, terrible break. 13 pins, rods stuck in her leg. She shouldn't even broke a bone. She slipped at a factory here in town. Just slipped. They did a bone index scan of her, and she was 55 years old. Her bones were that of an 85-year-old woman. So she had to get on some hormone replacement and some calcium. And I used her in class. I told her I used her in class. And then about 5 years later, she sent me a new scan that said she had the bones of a 49-year-old woman. So after she got on these hormones and got on calcium and stuff, and what it is, and this is a tough one, you girls got to make the call on this, but y'all need to know this about your parents, your mother and your grandmother, is once you go through menopause, it throws the hormones off, and you keep making hormones that make the osteoclast keep breaking down, osteoblasts quit making bone, but the osteoclast keep breaking it down. So basically, you start to dissolve your bones, and you don't have the hormone to cause it to grow back. And so a lot of women go on estrogen supplements right after menopause, which I would recommend that, but it also can cause some issues, greater risk of other problems. Has anybody had a parent, a grandparent, anybody's mother gone through menopause yet? Anybody? You'll find out old enough. Anybody been dealt with a grandparent, grandmother, or you hear your mom and dad talking about their parents going through menopause, their mother, and how cray they get? You hear that? So if you want your mother to stay the same, you might want her to take estrogen. Okay, my mother personality has completely changed since she went off estrogen probably at 65. So probably the last 10, 15 years, she quit taking estrogen because it was linked to some types of cancer. And her personality went from an S to a D. And, you know, S are people that want everybody to be happy and try to work everything out. And D people, they got to be the dictator. They wanted to direct everybody. I mean, I came home one time and she just looked at me and said, "You're fat and you lose weight." And she never said that to me. And I just looked at her and said, "Hey, at least I didn't get a stomach bypass like you, Mom. Thanks for the bad knees." You know, I got my bad knees from her. I play that game too. She had stomach bypass about 20 years ago because she couldn't lose weight. I mean, really, but pretty wild. But so she completely changed her personality without the her normal hormones. So I wish I could get her back on estrogen. I'd like to speak to my mother once again, the one that raised me. You know, not this alien that's taking over her body, right? So just be aware that that's something y'all gonna deal with, right? Going forward, it's kind of interesting. But that has to do with bones. I think that's really cool. Here's the little trabecula, the little pieces of bone that make up the spongy bone. Here it is. And I wasn't too far off here. Here is osteoporosis. And this is a weird one. This is not osteoarthritis. This is not the one we're thinking about. This is the one where the bones become marble or really hard. Maybe the movie Glass, right? The guy, he probably had this, right? So all his bones were like glass. They broke real easy. Okay, very terrible disease here. Look at this. Bones always break and you get fractures and nerve trapping, joint pains, very bad disease here. Okay, and we'll come back and talk about osteoporosis in just a little while. Okay, there are two ways we make bones in the human body. Okay, it's kind of a weird one here. And I have made this a short answer question before. I'm going to make it a question. It is short answer. It's not going to be but about 2 or 3 points. So you used to go into more detail on this, but I kind of backed off of this because it seems like it's pretty complicated. It just seems kind of weird. But let's go over it. We'll go over this and we'll wrap it up here in just a minute. But there are two ways we make bones in the body. Okay, one of it is by intermembranous ossification, where we have a embryonic layer of connective tissue in the body, like a layer of connective tissue, and then we make spongy bone on each side of it. And I'm going to flip around real quick, so y'all bear with me. The best example of intermembranous ossification, and I've got to copy this picture, but I'm too lazy to do it, so I just bore you by backing up. And here's the skull. So this is intermembranous ossification, where you have a layer of embryonic connective tissue in the middle that is spongy bone, and then you lay a layer of compact bone on each side of it. And these are really tough bones, intermembranous ossification. Okay, and that would be sternum and skull. I can't think of, and maybe some of the skull bones. Okay, now the other one is interchondral ossification, where you start out with a little bitty bone that is cartilage. So it has a cartilage, like mini bone that grows until the cartilage all dies and it becomes completely ossified, becomes a bone. So you have a model, and I say model, mean a small mini baby bone that's cartilage that grows with you. And this is the most common bone formation in the body, called endochondrial, where you have a cartilage model bone that grows with you until you reach maturity. Okay. Now we'll look at each of those real quick. I've already kind of hit this one, right? This intermembranous ossification forms flat bones, the skull, the clavicle. Primary bone is that mesothelial membrane, embryonic tissue, and you end up with a compact bone on each side of it, with the primary ossification center on that flat side. Let's see if we get up here. It is. Once again, bad artwork right here. Here is the osteoblast. Here's the bone forming. And look, see, I don't like the artwork, and here it's getting better. So we're going to form what? Compact bone on each side. You start out with a little trabecula in there, and you end up with complete bone, compact bone on each side of a flat bone. And you end up with spongy bone in the middle. That's some really bad artwork. If you can read through that and make any sense out of it, then God bless you, okay? That's really bad. So my question is going to be just distinguish the two on the test, okay? Be able to tell me the difference between the two, and I've already answered that. I'll probably answer it again here in a minute. Other examples of this one include the fontanelle, the soft spot in the skull, which we'll look at, right? So babies are born with a hole in their skull. There's some cartilage up there. It's not completely closed off, and that is so that the bones can overlap and you can get the cone head look by some of the beautiful folks in this room that were probably born through some pretty intense vaginal birth. Okay, so it makes you have a cone head. If you got the big Gerber head, the big fat head, then you probably were born by C-section, right? So you didn't get squeezed coming through there for some of us, right? So that's kind of interesting. But the bones overlap, and so God made that so the bones are not solidified until you're older. Okay, we'll come back. I'll show you fontanelles in the bone chat, the actual bones, which is the next chapter. So intermembranous is kind of explained through this. The endochondrial is we're going to have a cartilage model that starts to ossify as you get going on, as you're growing up, and it keeps that cartilage area, and that's how you get taller. Now, most bones are going to ossify completely by 7, but the leg bones and arm bones don't stop until you're 20, 21 in boys and like 18, 19 in girls. Let me show you a picture of this. Okay, I think the picture does a little bit better. This is probably, let's say this is the femur. So it starts out in embryonic development as a piece of cartilage. Everybody with me? And then look, we start getting ossification here, bone forming on the sides. Okay, that's what it's trying to show you here. And I'm not worried about all that detail. But notice that this is going to become the central canal, right? And watch the development. Now we've got calcification region here, right? But we're going to see a plate growth here. Here is cartilage still dividing. And here is the other one. Now this is still in probably embryonically here, but when you're born, notice the ends of the bone, femur hadn't formed real good yet. But as long as you have cartilage at a epiphyseal plate, you can still get taller. Once it ossifies, then you're through growing. Okay, so you're going to keep growing at that place. We're going to blow it up and look at that. So here you've got the medullary cavity forming, compact bone, but cartilage right here being converted into bone, but still dividing, thus pushing the bone out. So bone, your high growth of the bone is at this epiphyseal plate. Now, what you don't want to do is to break one of those, break a bone at the epiphyseal plate. That can cause a terrible birth defect where your bones get very weird shaped and grow really weird. So you don't want to do that. Big deal. Here it is. Here's an X-ray. You can see this is the hand of a young child. Look at the, when you see nothing, the hollow space here, that's cartilage. So the epiphyseal plates, you can see them circled there. And notice that the carpals are largely not visible because they have not completely ossified. So a lot of cartilage left here. Okay. So when you have endochondral ossification, you have this immature primitive cartilage bone model that grows into the bone, and you still have the growth plate. And we mentioned this. Here is osteoporosis. And this is the one of the most common forms of America where your bones become thin. Okay, most common bone disease in the United States. Bones become weak and brittle due to inadequate inorganic matrix, usually due to postmenopausal women. Dietary calcium, female gender want to take estrogen, and exercise, lifting weights, or even the rubber bands, resistance exercise will help bones grow. So all old people want to go to the gym and lift weights for about 30 minutes a day. And look at this. This is probably a woman that has been off estrogen postmenopausal for 2 or 3 years. You can see it hollowing out, right? So osteoporosis. Now, matter of fact, I always do this in class. Let's see, I know we got a lot of people starting to fade here, getting ready to come on up here. But how many of y'all have had a mother, a woman in your family, grandmother, great-grandmother break a hip? All right, anybody? Okay, I got 4 or 5 of us raise their hand. How many of y'all had a granddad break a hip? See, nobody, one. Okay, one. So this is a real problem in women that we see because of menopause. Okay, very, very serious thing for you ladies to know about, right? So osteoporosis is a brittling of the bones, usually due, and even in men, maybe not drinking enough, get enough milk and not eating properly. We can do a bone density measurement I told you about. It can be prevented with diet, supplemental vitamins, and even estrogen replacement. They even got a pill. My mother-in-law, if you smoke too, smoking is way increases this. So if your mother or grandmother smokes, then she has much greater risk of osteoporosis. I have a mother-in-law that's 80 years old, and she smokes a pack a day. I don't know, about 15, 20 years ago, she came to me, she said, I think I'm going to quit. And I said, don't, man, don't. You done made it to 70. Roll with it, man. It's working for you. You'd go in shock if you quit smoking. But she needed one of these supplements, and the one we got her, you take once a year. It's a pill you take once a year. And she came back and told me and my wife it was cramping her style. I'm like, one pill a year? How can that cramp your style? Take the freaking pill, okay? And she takes it now, and her bones have been pretty healthy. All right. Why don't we? I'm about ready to stop there. Why don't we stop there? We'll pick up here on bone growth. Let's stop and leave y'all a little time. Not have to rush up here. That's about 10 minutes early. But let's call it, and that's a good stopping point. 6.4. Okay. I'm gonna stop the recording, and if you all got some questions, y'all can